Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the fog-filled streets and candlelit rooms of Victorian England, where every whisper could shape a reputation, and every shadow hides a story untold. The first thing you notice is the sound, the distant toll of a church bell, deep and steady. Then the creak of a cart, the murmur of voices outside, the hiss of a lamp burning low. You are lying in a room of thin walls and heavy air, where the wallpaper peels in curling strips, and the chill lingers even beneath the blanket. Every detail feels foreign, and yet you are here, inside it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you'd like, leave a comment sharing where you're listening from or which moment in history you most want to wake up in. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the dim grey of a London dawn. The year is somewhere in the middle of the 19th century, though no one in the street will say it quite like that. They speak of reigns, of eras. This is Victoria's world now. A queen not yet old but already a symbol of permanence, whose face is on coins and whose gaze peers from the walls of civic halls. Your breath steams faintly as you sit up. The window rattles in its frame, and beyond it you hear the slow clip of horseshoes on cobbles, hollow and measured. Somewhere a bell marks the quarter hour. The sound carries through fog, softened as if wrapped in wool. The house where you stay is narrow, high-walled, built of soot-stained brick. The staircase smells of damp wood and blacking wax. Your hand brushes a carved banister worn smooth by decades of palms. You descend carefully, boots thudding softly, as voices rise from the street. It is a world of rules. They cling like starch to collars, like coal dust to curtains. A man may be ruined, not by poverty alone, but by whispers. A woman's reputation is currency finer than silver, and once stained, it rarely shines again. You step outside. The fog greets you first, cold, thick, tasting faintly of smoke. Gas lamps flicker pale halos that seem to dissolve before they reach the ground. The air is heavy with the smell of horse dung, of roasted chestnuts from a corner cellar, and the faint tang of the Thames, unseen but near. Carriages rumble past, wheels hissing against wet stone. Their windows are curtained, figures blurred behind glass, secrets carried silently. A newspaper boy darts between puddles, arms full of folded sheets. Voice high, trial begins. Divorce court scandal. The words vanish into the mist, caught by another boy repeating them in another alley. You move with the crowd, wrapped in wool, feeling shoulders pressed close. Men bow slightly as they pass ladies, eyes lowered, hats tipped, yet beneath the bows you sense glances too long. Conversations hushed when footsteps draw near. Society demands one face for daylight, another for candlelight. Inside a coffee house, warmth greets you. The ceiling is low, beams blackened by pipe smoke. You order nothing but breathe in the smell. Bitter grounds, damp coats steaming by the hearth. At a corner table, two men debate last week's case in the newly created divorce court. The Matrimonial Causes Act of 1857 made such trials public, and the city has been buzzing since. One man folds the paper, shaking his head. Too indecent, he mutters. The other smirks. Too profitable, you mean? They sell 10,000 copies in an hour. You slip away before they notice you're listening. Outside again, the fog has lifted slightly. You hear the clang of iron gates from a churchyard, the flutter of wings scattering from the stones. A girl passes with a bundle of laundry balanced high, her boots soaked, her cheeks red with cold. Behind her, a gentleman hails a hansom cab, coat flaring like a crow's wing. You see the driver's eyes in the mirror's quick glance, sharp and knowing. As noon approaches, the bells swell louder. Each district has its own, ringing out the hours with stubborn pride. The city becomes restless. But here, time is measured as much by scandal as by the turning hands of a clock. You pause at the steps of the Royal Courts of Justice. The building looms, Gothic spires scratching the grey sky. Its stones are streaked dark from rain. People cluster at the entrance, hats tilted, parasols folded, waiting to hear names read aloud in cases where private lives are laid bare. To some, it is tragedy. To others, entertainment. To all, it is proof that even under the weight of empire, even in a time of sermons and Sunday best, desire still stirs, still strays. Records suggest that more than half the divorces in these early years involved accusations of adultery. Letters seized, servants questioned, bedsheets inspected, even whisper it, doctors called to testify. The machinery of morality grinds fine, and it grinds loud. Yet behind every headline, behind every wigged judge and ink-stained clerk, are voices like yours, hearts like yours, beating, faltering, longing. You walk on. Past bookshops where pamphlets rustle, past boarding houses where shadows lean close behind blinds, past taverns where laughter sharpens into rumour, the afternoon thins into twilight. Lamps hiss to life again. The fog thickens once more, curling through alleyways, muffling the clatter of hooves. A woman's laughter drifts from an upstairs window, bright, then quickly hushed. A man coughs into his sleeve, his boots moving faster. You catch the faint clink of glass against glass from behind a door, the scrape of a chair. So many sounds, each one carrying stories untold. As night settles, you return along the river. The Thames is black and restless, barges sliding like shadows, lanterns bob on their decks, reflected in broken ribbons across the current. You pause by the rail. The iron is cold under your hand. A church bell tolls the hour again, deep and patient. Above, the sky is choked with smoke, stars barely piercing, but still they are there, faint, waiting. You breathe slowly, drawing in the damp night air, letting it fill you, letting it settle. The city drowses around you, restless yet weary. Tomorrow there will be more headlines, more trials, more whispers in corridors where candles gutter low. Tonight you walk home with their echoes already circling, 1,000 private dramas hidden behind lace curtains and locked doors. And though you cannot see them, though you will never know their full truth, you feel them close, like a heartbeat through the wall, steady, fragile, secret. The morning grows brighter, though the light feels pale, strained through mist and coal smoke. You step into the street again, boots striking damp stones, and for a moment you pause as the sound echoes away, swallowed by the city's vastness. The fog tastes faintly metallic, as though the air itself has been steeped in iron rails and chimney soot. You pull your coat tighter. London is awake now. Milk carts rattle by, their drivers drowsy but brisk. Women carry baskets heavy with bread, and the smell of yeast drifts from narrow doorways. A dog barks, the sound sharp, then fades into the rumble of wheels. The city hums with a rhythm at once mechanical and human, measured by bells, clocks, and the rise of countless voices. You pass a notice board nailed to a post, the paper flapping in the chill breeze. It announces sittings of the court for divorce, and matrimonial causes, words both clinical and devastating. Before 1857, such matters could only be dragged before Parliament, an ordeal costly enough that only dukes or earls dared attempt it. But now, with the Matrimonial Causes Act, ordinary men may accuse their wives in public, and women, though with fewer rights, may at least try to speak. The courtrooms have become theatres. People queue for seats as if for plays. Journalists jostle for vantage points, sharpening pencils, ready to pounce on every blush, every whisper, every slip of tongue. The law pretends to be blind, but the crowd comes for spectacle. You slip closer to the great doors of Westminster Hall, and the sound of voices grows clearer. The building looms high, its stonework wet, its windows darkened by soot. The steps are crowded with carriages, their wheels splattered with mud, their lamps dim from the fog. Men in dark coats speak in low tones. Women in bonnets avert their eyes, though some peek eagerly, hungry for names. Inside you find yourself pressed between bodies, the air thick with wool, starch, and candle smoke. A clerk calls out the docket. The names sound ordinary, but each syllable lands with a hush. Someone has risked everything, and someone else must answer. A cough breaks the silence, harsh, then dies away. You feel the chill of stone underfoot. The benches are crowded, every plank creaking. The judge sits high, wig powdered, robe sweeping. He leans forward slightly, his eyes catching the faintest flicker of expression. Solicitors murmur, shuffling papers. Every sound magnifies, even the scratch of a quill, as though the very walls wish to remember. Records suggest that in those first years the majority of petitions came from men. A husband need only show proof of his wife's infidelity to dissolve their union. A wife, by contrast, had to show not only infidelity but cruelty, desertion, or incest as well. The imbalance is felt in every gasp of the gallery, every rustle of skirts as a woman takes the stand. You watch as one such woman steps forward now. Her gloved hands tremble, but her voice is steady. She insists she has been faithful. Yet the evidence lies heavy in letters, in testimony from servants who swear they heard footsteps, saw shadows, smelt perfume in the wrong place at the wrong hour. Whether true or not, the spectacle devours her. Faces lean closer, murmurs spread. The walls listen, and so does London beyond. A newsman scratches furiously in his notebook. By nightfall his words will ride through the streets on folded paper, hawked by boys who shout until their throats grow hoarse. Headlines drip with suggestion. They do not need proof. They need drama. The public laps it up. Scandal served like sugared tea. You step out again, into the fading afternoon. The sound of the court still echoes behind you. But here the city moves on. A costermonger cries his wares, apples bruised but cheap. A seamstress hurries by, pins still clinging to her sleeve. Somewhere, a piano plinks uncertain notes, drifting through a half-open window. Life goes on, even as lives unravel behind those stone doors. You think of the rules, unwritten but powerful. A lady must never be alone with a man not her husband. Curtains must be drawn. Letters must be burned, yet letters are rarely burned. They survive folded into drawers, tied with ribbon, left vulnerable to discovery. Ink betrays, paper remembers. You pass a bookshop where pamphlets in the window mock the very laws meant to uphold decency. One is a cartoon, a judge with scales tipped by a woman's tears. Another shows a husband triumphant, while his wife is led away in chains. People laugh, but the laughter hides unease. Everyone knows the rules, and everyone knows they are brittle. The fog thickens again, seeping into alleys, curling around lampposts. You walk slower, your breath visible, your boots damp. The gas lamps hiss, faint halos fighting the darkness. Behind lace curtains you glimpse shadows moving, two figures leaning too close, then pulling apart as if the walls themselves had eyes. A whistle blows somewhere in the distance, long and low, perhaps a train. The sound vibrates in the air, a reminder of how swiftly news can now travel, how fast reputations can fall. You stop by the river once more. Barges drift, their lanterns swaying like fireflies on black water. The air smells of tar and brine. You hear a voice behind you, soft, uncertain. Do you think they'll forgive her? The speaker is gone before you can turn. Footsteps lost in the mist. Forgiveness is rare in this world. Respectability is everything. A woman cast out may never return, while a man, if he is wealthy enough, may shrug and start again. The rules are written not in law alone, but in glances, whispers, silences. You breathe slowly, letting the damp air settle in your chest. The day wanes. London darkens. Another trial begins tomorrow. Another headline waits to be inked. Another reputation hangs by a thread. And you, walking home through fog and flicker, feel the weight of it pressing down. A world both rigid and fragile, where appearances matter more than truth, and truth is rarely clean. The morning breaks grey once more, damp and restless, as you find yourself drawn back toward the streets that lead to the new divorce court. The air smells of ink and wet stone. Every step echoes with anticipation, as if the city itself waits for the next confession, the next unraveling of a private life. Today, the name on every tongue is Robinson, a quiet family, once ordinary, now paraded for all to see. Isabella Robinson, wife to Henry, has been accused of stepping beyond the narrow line set for her. The crowd gathers early, boots scraping on cold flagstones, parasols folded tightly against drizzle. Some come to condemn, others to savour, and many come simply to see. You slip inside, the hall crowded, the air sharp with candle wax and damp wool. The benches creak beneath the weight of bodies. The sound of a quill scratching fills the silence. Clerks shuffle papers, while reporters whisper as they sharpen their pencils against the wooden seats. A bell strikes the hour. The case begins. Isabella is not young, though not yet old. She carries herself with an air that trembles between defiance and weariness. Her bonnet sits neatly, her gloves pulled high, as though the armour of clothing might shield her. Her husband sits rigid, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Between them lies more than a table. Between them lies betrayal, or the suspicion of it, thick as smoke. Evidence is presented not in voices alone, but in ink. A diary seized from her possession, its pages filled with confessions too private for daylight. Records suggest that Isabella wrote of feelings for another man, Dr. Edward Lane. Whether the words were truth or the longing of a restless mind, no one can say. Yet the court treats the diary as scripture. You imagine the paper between your fingers, thin and faintly scented of lavender. Ink strokes press hard, as if each word carried weight too heavy to hide. The letters tremble at moments, smudged by the touch of a hand, perhaps even by tears. You see in your mind's eye her writing by candlelight, the house quiet, her heart loud. Servants are called. Their testimonies speak of glances, of absences, of footsteps on stairs when none should climb. But voices quaver, details blur. Were they witnesses, or were they eager to please a master? The uncertainty lingers, but the court does not mind. It feeds on suggestion. The judge leans forward, his wig shadowing his eyes. Lawyers circle the story like dogs around meat, each tugging for proof. The gallery leans closer, every cough hushed. You feel the air thicken, heavy with judgment. A woman in the crowd presses a handkerchief to her lips. A man clears his throat too loudly and earns a dozen frowns. Even the rustle of skirts feels amplified in this silence. Outside, the city waits. Newsboys are ready, their stacks of papers ink still damp. Within hours, Isabella's name will be shouted across corners, carried through alleys, fluttering in the hands of strangers. Her private heart will become public property. And you, sitting silent, sense the cruelty of it. A man may confess desires and be forgiven, even pitied. A woman writes them in her diary, and she is dragged into court. The law claims fairness, but the balance tilts. Even now you feel the gallery's hunger not for truth, but for shame. The day drags on. Testimonies overlap. Letters are read aloud, each syllable cutting deeper. The diary is waved again, its pages rattling like dry leaves. One passage is repeated, the words echoing against the stone walls, their meaning twisted until it no longer matters whether they were real or imagined. By late afternoon, the air inside has grown thick. Candles sputter in their holders, dripping wax onto wood. A clerk coughs into his sleeve, his shoulders shaking. Someone opens a narrow window, and cold air streams in, mingling with the smell of damp wool and ink. Isabella's figure seems smaller now, her shoulders bent. She does not weep, not before them, but her silence speaks louder than her words. You step outside as the court adjourns. The sky is a slate colour, the fog pressing low. Bells toll 6 o'clock, deep and final. Crowds spill into the streets, their chatter buzzing with scandal. A man mutters to his wife. She should have known better. The wife nods, though her eyes look distant, perhaps thinking of secrets she herself has tucked away. The smell of roasted chestnuts drifts through the dusk. A boy runs past, arms full of papers, shouting Isabella's name as though it were a headline rather than a life. People snatch copies, coins clattering into his palm. The words inside will be read by lamplight tonight. Families huddled, whispers rising. You walk slower now, boots splashing in shallow puddles. The Thames breathes its dark scent, and the lamps halo faintly above the water. In the distance, a piano strikes a mournful tune through an open shutter, a melody soon swallowed by fog. Isabella's fate remains uncertain. Records suggest her husband won his case, though not without doubts. The diary may have been truth, or may have been longing. Perhaps she loved, perhaps she only dreamed. History cannot decide. But for the court, for the papers, for the city, the difference did not matter. You pause on a bridge, the cold iron rail beneath your palm. Below, black water folds upon itself. Never still, you breathe deeply. The damp air cooling your chest, the echoes of her story still circling your mind. A diary, a handful of words, enough to condemn. And somewhere behind a shuttered window, another woman writes by candlelight, her pen scratching softly, each stroke a secret, each word a risk. The year feels older now, as though the fog itself has thickened with secrets. You walk again through London's streets, boots clicking on uneven stones, and the sound of the city seems more urgent than before. The clip of horses, the crack of whips, the shouts of vendors, each carries an edge, a restless energy. People lean together in doorways, heads close, whispers short. You sense it before you hear the name, Dilke. Sir Charles Dilke is no ordinary man. He is a politician of prominence, a figure many believed destined for the very highest office. His speeches are praised, his intellect admired, his prospects bright, but now his name drifts like smoke above every conversation, staining even those who only speak it. You join the crowd pressing toward the court. The air inside is close, heavy with damp wool and perfume. Reporters gather in clusters, their ink-stained fingers smudging the very notes that will travel through the city before nightfall. The case, at first glance, seems almost absurd. An accusation so tangled it feels like a play, yet the play is real, and the audience is vast. At the centre is Virginia Crawford, young and caught between roles, wife, daughter, accuser, witness. Her husband, Donald Crawford, has filed for divorce. He claims that his wife has been unfaithful with none other than Sir Charles himself. The words strike like thunder. To accuse a statesman of such conduct is to rattle not only one family, but the machinery of politics itself. You watch as Virginia enters, her figure slight beneath layers of fabric. She moves quickly, as though the air itself presses on her. Behind her, whispers ripple through the gallery. Some lean forward to catch a glimpse of her face. Others mutter darkly about ambition, deceit, betrayal. Her husband sits stony, his expression unreadable, his fists clenched in his lap. The proceedings unfold slowly, each sentence like a drop of water echoing in stone halls. Lawyers circle with careful words, asking about evenings spent, letters exchanged, doors closed. Records hint that Virginia confessed once, in private, to relations with Sir Charles, though later she denied it. Was it truth in a moment of weakness, or invention to wound a husband? The court cannot decide, but the uncertainty is enough. You imagine the room where she might have spoken, a parlour heavy with velvet curtains, the smell of coal smoke and roses mingling in the air, her voice low, perhaps trembling, her hands twisting in her lap. Did she seek pity? Did she seek escape? Or was it simply a moment when silence proved heavier than words? In court, every detail is magnified. A maid testifies she saw glances exchanged, a carriage door shut too quickly, a hand brushed too close. Another swears she heard laughter late at night. Yet laughter proves nothing. Still, the gallery feeds on it, each word sharpened by anticipation. The judge listens, unsmiling. His wig casts shadows across his brow, papers shuffle, quills scratch, a candle sputters, dripping wax onto the oak desk below. Time drags, yet every moment feels weighted. By afternoon, the heat of the crowd grows stifling. A man near you removes his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. The scent of perfume thickens, mingling with damp cloth and the faint tang of ink. Someone coughs, a sound hollow against stone. A child shifts restlessly on a mother's lap. Even here, even now, life continues its small rhythms amid scandal. Outside, the press waits impatiently. Headlines are already being set, some declaring guilt, others pity. The public cares little for subtlety. They want names, details, a story to carry into parlours and pubs. Sir Charles Dilke, once the bright star of reform, now becomes the whispered name behind fans and cigars alike. You walk past a group of men huddled by a lamppost. One shakes his head. Ruined, he mutters. Career gone. Another shrugs. Never trust a man too clever by half. Their voices carry the satisfaction of those who watch a great tree fall, not with sorrow, but with a certain relish. The trial drags on, but its outcome is muddled. Virginia's testimony shifts. Accusations twist and blur. Records suggest contradictions. Moments where memory falters or nerves undo words. Yet the damage is done. Though formally acquitted, Sir Charles emerges not triumphant, but broken. The shadow lingers. He withdraws from politics, his star extinguished. You feel it in the streets in the days that follow. Newspaper boys shout his name with relish. Cartoons in shop windows mock his fall, showing him tangled in ropes of gossip, drowning in seas of ink. At a coffee house, two men debate heatedly. One insists he was guilty. The other claims it was all fabrication. Neither truly knows, but both feel certain. Such is the nature of scandal. At dusk you walk past Sir Charles's house. The curtains are drawn, the lamps within dim. A servant carries coal inside, his eyes lowered, his steps quick. The house feels smaller now, hunched against the street, as if it too wishes to hide. You pause by the railings, the iron cold under your gloved hand. The air smells faintly of damp leaves carried on the evening wind. Somewhere nearby a clock strikes 7, the chimes ringing slow and deliberate. You think of Virginia again, her face pale beneath the weight of eyes, her voice faltering. You wonder if she sleeps tonight, or if the silence presses too heavily. Records hint that years later she sought a quieter life. Her name softened by time, though never erased. Sir Charles, too, lingered in public memory, not for his reforms, but for the scandal that shadowed them. A man of promise undone, not by policy, but by whispers of the heart. The city moves on, carriages roll, shopkeepers shutter their stalls, the river laps darkly at its banks, yet the echo remains. A career ended, a marriage fractured, a woman's voice caught between confession and denial. You breathe deeply, the fog cool in your lungs. Around you, the lamps glow faintly, halos dissolving into the night. The crowd has dispersed, but their words linger in the air like smoke, clinging to stone and skin alike. And as you turn homeward, boots tapping a slow rhythm, you feel the weight of another life, another name, another story lost and found in the endless tide of scandal. The fog is thinner tonight, and the lamps glow a little clearer in the damp air. You step into a bookstall lit by flickering gaslight, and the scent of paper ink still sharp from the press rises around you. Pamphlets lie in neat stacks, their headlines in bold letters. Yet these are not about London families or titled lords. The name printed here belongs to a man across the ocean, Henry Ward Beecher. You trace the letters with your eyes, lips moving silently. A preacher, it says, a man of thunderous sermons, a voice that filled vast halls, who once spoke against slavery and for the soul of America. And yet, here his name is not spoken in reverence, but in whispers. You lift a sheet, the paper rough, the ink smudging slightly beneath your fingers. The story unfolds. Elizabeth Tilton, wife of Beecher's close friend Theodore, accused of yielding to the preacher's embrace, a trial spanning months, endless testimony, a hung jury. The words read like theatre, and indeed, London has come to treat it as such. You leave the stall, tucking the paper beneath your coat. The night is restless. Horse hooves clatter louder than usual, as though even the animals feel the tension of scandal. In a tavern doorway, voices rise. Did you hear? The preacher himself brought down by temptation. A burst of laughter follows, then a muttered prayer. The court in Brooklyn may be an ocean away, but in imagination you are there. The benches are crowded with men and women leaning forward, breath caught. The preacher stands tall, his hair silvered, his face flushed. His words roll like thunder, insisting innocence, pleading truth. Yet beside him sits Elizabeth, pale, her hands clenched, her voice trembling as she admits what she once confessed to her husband. Records suggest she wavered, pulled by loyalty and by shame. At times she claimed intimacy, at others she denied it. The contradictions fed the crowd like kindling. The judge strikes the gavel, but silence never lasts long. The room vibrates with hunger, for clarity, for certainty, for downfall. The air is hot inside that courtroom. Candles sputter, their wax dripping onto the wood. The smell of sweat and lamp oil clings to the walls. You hear the shuffle of restless feet, the scrape of a chair dragged too loudly. Every whisper seems to echo, every sigh magnified. The jurors glance at one another, their faces lined with fatigue, their eyes heavy. They listen not only to words but to the tone, the posture, the tremble of a lip. You see Theodore Tilton himself, betrayed friend and husband, his eyes hollow, his posture stiff. He looks not only at his wife, but at the man he once admired above all. Imagine the weight in his chest, the clash of anger and grief, humiliation and disbelief. His silence in that moment is louder than Beecher's booming defense. The trial drags on for 6 months. 6 months of lives unspooled before strangers, letters examined, dates recited, memories dissected, servants testify, friends contradict, reporters fill endless columns. Even the smallest detail becomes fuel. Who closed a door? Who lingered by a garden gate? Who wrote a note too tender for friendship alone? In London, each day's proceedings sail across the Atlantic, inked and folded, then shouted by newsboys on foggy mornings. At breakfast tables, readers linger over the columns, butter knives paused in midair, respectable matrons raise eyebrows while secretly reading every line. Gentlemen clear their throats, pretending disinterest, then carry the paper with them to the office. One evening you imagine yourself again in a London coffee house. The place is warm, packed, the air rich with the smell of tobacco and damp wool. A man reads aloud from the paper, each phrase met with groans or chuckles. 6 months and still they cannot decide, he declares. The listeners shake their heads. One mutters, if even preachers fall, what hope for the rest of us? His words hang heavy, then fade beneath the scrape of spoons on cups. The irony is not lost on anyone. A man who thundered against sin, now accused of it himself. Whether guilty or not, the image is irresistible. Satirical prints spread through the streets, showing the preacher with angel's wings tattered, halo cracked. A hymn book lies open, but its pages flutter blank. Meanwhile, in New York, Elizabeth's every appearance is scrutinized. What colour dress she wears, whether her veil is lifted, whether her voice quivers. Court records hint at her fragility, her struggle between truth and silence. Some say she was pressured by her husband, others that she longed for freedom. The uncertainty lingers, thick as smoke. You step out into the night air once more. The city feels alive with whispers, as though every window hides someone reading aloud the latest testimony. The cobbles glisten beneath lamplight, each puddle a small mirror reflecting smoke and light. A bell strikes 10, the sound echoing deep, then fading into silence. The trial ends not with clarity but with exhaustion. The jury cannot agree. Some believe him guilty, others insist innocence. The result is a hung jury, and with it, a verdict that satisfies no one. Yet in scandal, certainty is not required. The stain lingers all the same. Beecher returns to his pulpit, but his voice never carries as it once did. Elizabeth Tilton retreats, her name spoken more in pity than in judgment. Theodore drifts, his trust forever broken. The newspapers move on to fresher stories, but in London, for a time his name lingers in parlours and pubs. Another tale of betrayal, another warning whispered with a shake of the head. You find yourself again on a bridge above the Thames, the wind tugging at your coat. The water below is restless, black and shining, the smell of brine and smoke rising from its surface. You lean on the rail, the iron cold beneath your palms. Records hint that long after, Beecher's admirers forgave him, or at least forgot. Yet the scandal reminds you that no man, however powerful his voice, is safe from suspicion. Reputation is fragile as paper touched by damp air. A church bell strikes midnight now, deep and solemn. You close your eyes and let the sound settle through you. The preacher's voice fades into the distance, leaving only the whisper of water, the hiss of lamps, and the sense that scandal, like fog, drifts easily across oceans. The lamps burn low as you turn down a narrower street. The stones here more uneven, the shadows deeper. It is late summer in London, the year 1889, though the air is already cool, dampness clinging to brick walls. You smell soot and boiled cabbage, hear the quick footfalls of boys running messages. Somewhere in the distance a whistle blows, high and sharp, summoning attention. The address whispered tonight is Cleveland Street. To most, it is just another row of narrow houses, their facades plain, their curtains drawn. But to those who follow the newspapers, it has become something else. A place where the very foundations of Victorian respectability seem to tremble. You walk slower, your boots tapping a muted rhythm. The fog here is heavier, pressing low as though it wishes to hide the truth. Yet truth has already spilled into the streets. Police reports circulate. Journalists scent a story, and behind closed doors, gentlemen murmur nervously, fearing their names might be spoken aloud. The scandal begins quietly, with the investigation of a telegraph boy caught with money far beyond his wages. Questions asked, answers stumbled. Records suggest the boy confessed to earning it in ways no one wished to hear. From that single voice, the thread unraveled, leading investigators to Cleveland Street and the men who visited it. You pause at the doorway of the house itself. The wood is worn, the brass handle dull. Behind it, so the papers claim, young boys were paid to offer what could never be spoken publicly. The clientele, it was whispered, included officers, aristocrats, perhaps even those with ties to the royal household. The uncertainty was enough to ignite the city. Inside the courtroom, the air feels different. Not just scandal, but danger. This is not the familiar tale of a wife's indiscretion or a husband's wandering heart. This is a crime, judged harshly by law and by society alike. The penalty is severe, the shame greater still. You sit quietly as witnesses take the stand. Their voices are low, their words halting. They speak of men arriving at the house after dark, of carriages waiting in silence, of laughter muffled by curtains. The gallery leans closer, some in shock, others in secret fascination. You see hands cover mouths, fans raised to shield faces, yet eyes never stray from the speakers. The lawyers circle carefully. Too much detail, and the court itself might recoil. Too little, and the case will falter. They walk a narrow line, words chosen with precision, tones sharp and cold. The judge watches, expression stern, though records suggest he too feared the ripples this trial might cause. The smell in the courtroom is heavy, wax, damp wool, and the faint tang of sweat. A man near you shifts, his chair creaking, and the sound seems loud against the silence. Another coughs, quickly muffled. No one wishes to break the spell of curiosity and dread. Outside, The press is relentless. Newsboys shout headlines that stop just short of names. Rumours rush faster than truth, painting pictures more vivid than any testimony. In parlours across London, families whisper over tea. Did you hear who was seen there? They say a lord, perhaps even closer to the throne. Voices lower at the last words, glances darting toward the door, as if the walls themselves might report them. You walk along the Strand later that evening, the pavement crowded, the lamps glowing pale. Every conversation seems touched by the scandal. Men in clubs exchange knowing looks, their cigars glowing red in the haze. Women in drawing rooms cluck disapproval, though their eyes gleam with interest. Even cab drivers, perched on high seats, mutter to one another as they pass. Another name's bound to fall before long. The smell of ink and newsprint fills the city. Each day brings new speculation, each paper eager to outdo the rest. One prints a cartoon of a grand house with curtains drawn tight, shadows moving within. Another sketches a telegraph boy clutching coins, his eyes wide with guilt. The images linger in windows, drawing curious stares. You imagine one of those boys, his boots too large, his cap askew, standing before policemen with fear in his chest. His voice cracks as he tells of what he saw, what he did. Records suggest some spoke reluctantly, others with resentment, and still others with a strange relief, as though secrets long carried had finally slipped free. Yet each testimony bound another thread into the net, drawing the scandal wider. The city itself feels restless in those weeks. Bells mark the hours as always, but now each chime seems sharper, as if measuring the pace of rumour. Shopkeepers talk more than they sell. Clerks in counting houses lower their voices when footsteps pass. Even in churches, sermons hint darkly at sins unnamed, urging prayer, urging vigilance. In the court, names are hinted but not shouted. One in particular, Lord Euston, surfaces again and again, though he protests fiercely, swearing innocence. The uncertainty is enough. In this world, a shadow is as damning as light. By winter, the case grows colder. Powerful men intervene. Evidence fades, and the court moves on. No great names are toppled. No lords dragged fully into the dock. Yet the city remembers. Whispers outlast verdicts. You step out once more into the fog, the night pressing close. The street lamps hiss, hollows trembling. The river smells strong tonight, tar and smoke mingling with damp stone. A carriage rattles past, wheels splashing through puddles. The driver does not look your way. Behind you, Cleveland Street lies silent, its windows dark. Yet you feel it still, the echo of laughter hushed, of doors closing too quickly, of footsteps on stairs in the wrong hour, a world hidden in shadows, exposed only briefly, then swallowed again. Records hint that the scandal haunted the decade, its true reach never fully revealed, letters destroyed, files misplaced, voices silenced. Yet the name alone, Cleveland Street, became shorthand for a truth too dangerous to print. You walk slowly toward the bridge, boots ringing softly, bells toll from St. Paul's, deep and solemn, the sound rolling through mist. You pause at the railing, the iron cold beneath your gloved hand, and breathe deeply. In the silence that follows, you sense the city's unease. Some scandals fade quickly, soothed by time. Others linger like smoke, clinging to walls and clothes, impossible to wash away. This one lingers still. The fog hangs heavier tonight, the kind that makes gas lamps look like smudges of gold on damp canvas. You walk slowly through the city, your boots striking stone with a muffled beat. Ahead, you hear the rattle of carriage wheels, the quick clip of hooves, and the faint cry of a newsboy echoing through the mist. His voice carries one name again and again, Parnell. Charles Stuart Parnell, to some the uncrowned King of Ireland, to others a dangerous agitator who threatened the order of the empire. For years he was a figure of iron will, his speeches filling halls, his followers chanting his name. But now all that strength, all that certainty bends beneath the weight of one scandal. You turn the corner and join the small crowd outside a newspaper office. The window is fogged with breath as people press close to read the latest sheet pasted to the glass. Letters smudge in the damp, but the words are clear enough. Mrs. O'Shea, divorce petition, adultery proved. The silence of the onlookers is louder than shouting. Hats tilt, eyes narrow, lips press thin. A woman shakes her head and whispers to her companion, who clutches his shawl tighter. The scandal was years in the making. Behind closed doors, away from the shouting galleries and committee rooms, Parnell had lived another life. For more than a decade he shared his heart with Catherine Kitty O'Shea, wife of Captain William O'Shea. Letters passed between them, tender and reckless, their words carrying both passion and danger. Records suggest she bore him children in secrecy, hidden from the very movement he led. You imagine her at a writing desk, quill trembling in her hand. The room is quiet except for the ticking of a clock, the fire crackling low. She leans forward, her hair catching the glow, her eyes fixed on the page. Yours always, she might write, the ink blotting slightly where her hand lingers too long. She folds the letter quickly, sealing it with wax as though speed might conceal its weight. Now those private words, once pressed to paper in intimacy, are read aloud in the cold formality of a courtroom. The air is sharp with candle smoke and damp wool as clerks shuffle documents, voices carrying phrases never meant for public ears. Parnell does not deny them. He sits straight-backed, silent, his jaw tight, his gaze steady. Kitty, pale but resolute, sits near him, the lines of her face drawn tight with exhaustion. The gallery hums with unease. Here is not a frivolous affair of ballrooms and whispered trysts, but a union that had lasted for years, hidden in plain sight, a love that defied both law and convention, now stripped bare before strangers. The judge's voice is cold, the lawyer's precise, but the air crackles with something raw, the knowledge that a nation's hopes are tied to one man, and that man is now undone. Outside, the streets erupt. Newspaper boys shout themselves hoarse, their cries mingling with the clatter of wheels. In Irish districts of the city, men slam papers down on tables, faces pale, voices raised. In Parliament halls, members whisper in corners, calculating loyalties, weighing futures. For Parnell, the verdict is not merely personal, it is political death. You walk away from the court and into the night. The Thames lies dark and swollen, the air thick with damp. The lamps reflect in broken lines across the water, quivering like truths too fragile to hold. You lean on the railing, the iron slick beneath your palm, and watch a barge slip past, its lantern bobbing. You think of Kitty again, her life now carved open. For years she lived in shadows, her love carried in silence. Now every drawing room, every tavern, every street corner rings with her name. Some condemn her, others pity her, but none leave her untouched. She is both villain and victim, depending on the voice that tells her story. Parnell's supporters rally at first. They declare love no crime, loyalty no shame, but cracks appear quickly. The church denounces him. Political allies step back, unwilling to risk the stain. In meetings once filled with cheers, silence falls heavy. Even his voice, still strong, carries less weight against the thunder of disapproval. You wander through a neighbourhood where Irish workers live close together, their windows glowing faintly. Through a half-open door, you hear voices, angry, mournful, divided. Some curse the hypocrisy of leaders who condemn a man for love. Others shake their heads, whispering that Ireland needs purity, not scandal. The sound of their debate drifts into the street, a reminder that politics lives not only in chambers, but in kitchens and parlours. Records suggest that in the months that followed, Parnell fought desperately to hold his place. He married Kitty at last, making public the bond long hidden, but by then the tide had turned. His health failed, his allies deserted him, his reputation too burdened to carry forward. Within a year he was gone, buried in Ireland, mourned and contested in equal measure. You pause outside a church now. Its doors closed, the bells silent, the stones are damp, the air cool against your face. A poster on the wall warns against immorality, its words stark in the lamplight. You think of how rules are written, how judgment falls heavier on some than on others. A queen may be remembered for her mourning, a politician ruined for his loving. The balance is never even. The fog presses closer as you walk on. The sound of your footsteps blends with the distant toll of a clock striking midnight. Around you, the city sleeps uneasy, its dreams haunted by names carried in scandal, Parnell, O'Shea. Words once private, now woven into history, whispered even here in the quiet dark. And as you turn toward home, you feel their story still lingering, heavy as the damp air, fragile as the flame of a lamp in fog. The evening draws close, and the city feels quieter now, though never silent. A drizzle falls, soaking into your coat, pattering against the brim of your hat. Lamps flicker, their glass clouded with droplets. You hear the hollow clatter of hooves as a lone carriage passes, its windows curtained, its shadow sliding along the walls. You walk slower, the mist settling on your face, and somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls the hour. Tonight the name is older, one whispered still in drawing rooms decades later. Lady Astley, Georgiana Dashwood, by birth, daughter of a well-regarded family. She married Sir Jacob Astley in 1829, a union of name and estate, of bloodlines and appearances. But behind the gilt of her title, another story unravelled. You imagine her first at the threshold of Melton Constable Hall, the Astley estate. The stone walls loom grey and ancient ivy climbing high, windows glowing faintly in the dusk. Inside, the air smells of polish and damp velvet. The corridors echo with footsteps softened by carpets. A young bride, her gown trailing, her smile fixed, her future promised. Yet already, perhaps, her heart looked elsewhere. Rumours spoke of Captain Thomas Garth, a man with charm enough to unsettle a household. Records suggest that Georgiana formed an attachment too deep to disguise. Letters hint at tenderness, glances too long across candlelit tables, absences that stretched longer than polite excuses could cover. Servants, those silent keepers of stories, noticed. And in England of the 1830s, what servants noticed soon became known. You walk the long hall in imagination, the smell of smoke lingering from the great hearth, candles gutter in their sconces, shadows stretching like fingers across the panelled walls. Georgiana paces alone, her slippers brushing the carpet, her breath uneven. She pauses by a desk, lifting a letter, her fingers trembling. Perhaps she reads it once more before folding it away, hiding it beneath linen. When discovery came, it came harshly. Sir Jacob Astley, wounded in pride and honour, pursued divorce. Few dared such steps then, for before the 1857 law, divorce required a private act of Parliament, a spectacle in itself, costly and humiliating. He accused his wife of adultery, a charge that would stain her forever. The court sessions were crowded. Men leaned forward, hungry for each detail. Women lifted their veils, their eyes fixed on the accused. Testimonies poured forth. Witnesses spoke of clandestine meetings, of doors closed too quickly, of a carriage driven at odd hours. Whether true or embroidered, each word added weight. You sit among them in your mind, the air close with heat and anticipation. A woman coughs into her glove, a man shifts, the bench creaking beneath his weight. The judge, robed and stern, listens with steady gaze. Papers shuffle, quills scratch, voices rise and fall. The atmosphere is not of justice, but of theatre. Georgiana herself is pale, her face composed, though her hands betray her, fingers twisting in her lap. She denies nothing, or perhaps she denies too softly. Records differ. Some say she remained calm, others that she wept openly. Yet, whatever her words, the outcome was certain. The decree passed. The marriage was dissolved, and Georgiana, stripped of status, found herself cast out. She lived thereafter with Captain Garth, though the law recognised her not as wife but as fallen woman. Years later she bore a child and died soon after, her life cut short, her story reduced in parlours to a warning. Outside the court, the crowd buzzed with judgment. She had everything, someone muttered, and still it wasn't enough. Another shook his head. No woman recovers from this. Their voices carried in the damp air, mingling with the cries of newsboys hawking sheets that bore her name. You walk now through a quieter street. The cobbles slick with rain, a window glows above, and you glimpse a family gathered near the hearth, children drowsing, a mother smoothing her skirts. Inside, warmth and order. Outside, shadows and scandal. The contrast sharpens the chill in your bones. You pause by an iron railing, its paint flaking beneath your fingers. The smell of wet earth rises from a small garden. A cat slips past, silent as a shadow. Somewhere nearby, a clock strikes 9, each chime slow, deliberate. Records suggest that long after, Lady Astley's story was retold in whispers, not as romance, but as caution, the lesson pressed upon daughters. Guard your reputation, guard your silence, for one slip, and the world will never forgive. Yet in those whispers there lingered also a trace of fascination, even envy for a woman who chose love over duty, if only for a time. The drizzle thickens into rain. You lift your collar, drawing it close, and walk on. The lamps hiss, halos shimmering through falling drops. Your boots splash in shallow puddles, the sound rhythmic, soothing. Behind you the tale of Lady Astley fades into the night, another echo in the endless chorus of scandal. Still, as you turn the corner you think of her once more, her hand on a folded letter, her gaze caught in candlelight, her voice unsteady yet brave. For all the judgment, for all the ruin, there remains the memory of a woman who loved, and paid dearly for it. The streets hum with a restless rhythm, as you walk through London on a damp autumn morning. The fog is lifting slowly, replaced by a fine drizzle that beads along the brim of your hat and dampens the cuffs of your coat. Hooves splash in puddles, wheels hiss against wet stone, and above it all rises the sing-song cry of a boy hawking papers. Lady Colin in court again, testimony from the servants. The words catch in the air like sparks. Passers-by glance, pause, purchase. Coins clink, headlines rustle, and another copy vanishes into the damp crowd. You follow the flow toward the courthouse, drawn as though by a current stronger than your own will. Inside, the air is heavy, close with the smell of wet wool, candle smoke, and ink. The benches creak beneath the weight of bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. Hats are tipped, gloves adjusted, parasols folded carefully along laps. The gallery is full, ladies whispering behind their fans, men pretending disinterest while straining to hear every word. The atmosphere is not of solemn justice, but of eager theatre. At the centre sits Gertrude Elizabeth Blood, Lady Colin Campbell. Dark hair frames a pale face, her eyes steady despite the crush of gazers. Born into privilege, raised with polish, she now endures the raw exposure of the court. Her husband, George Campbell, the son of the Duke of Argyll, has accused her of adultery with more than one man. The charges are lurid, the details meant to sting. You imagine her on the morning she first stepped into the witness box. Her gown rustles softly, the fabric heavy against her skin. She lifts her chin, but her hands, gloved in cream leather, tremble slightly. The judge's gaze falls upon her, the barristers lean forward, and the gallery hushes to stillness. Testimonies pour forth. Servants speak of shadowed corridors, of locked doors, of whispered voices carried through thin walls. One claims to have seen a gentleman slip into her room. Another insists he glimpsed her hand resting on a stranger's shoulder. Most scandalous of all is the tale of a groom who claimed he spied her through a keyhole in what he described as undeniable intimacy. The gallery gasps. Fans flutter, men cough into fists. The judge raises a hand for silence, but the damage is done. The image lingers in every mind, whether truth or fabrication. It hardly matters. In scandal, suggestion weighs as heavily as proof. Lady Colin denies the charges with calm precision. Her voice is steady, low, carrying just enough steel to remind listeners she will not collapse. She counters each accusation, questions motives, challenges the honesty of those who would trade loyalty for coin or revenge. Yet the whispers persist, winding like smoke through the crowd. You sit among them, feeling the press of the moment. A woman beside you murmurs, "So young, so reckless." Another leans closer to whisper, "She is brave though, braver than most." The contrast is sharp, condemnation and admiration mingling in the same breath. The proceedings stretch on, day after day. The courtroom grows thick with fatigue, yet no one stays away. Newspapers seize every detail. Satirical sketches appear in shop windows. A keyhole drawn large, a lady's silhouette beyond it. A crowd of eyes peering in. The cruelty is sharp, the fascination sharper still. One afternoon you leave the court as the bells toll 3. Outside, the pavement glistens, rain pooling in shallow hollows. A crowd gathers beneath umbrellas, the spokes glinting in the watery light. Men light cigars, their smoke rising in grey spirals. Women cluster together, whispering, their voices sharp as pins. Even children, darting between skirts, repeat the name they've heard shouted in the streets. Lady Colin, Lady Colin. In printing shops, presses thunder, metal plates smear ink onto damp paper, stacks of broadsheets tossed to waiting boys. The headlines are blunt, unforgiving, peer's wife accused, shocking keyhole testimony. The city drinks in every word, scandal passed hand to hand until it feels like common property. Back inside her home, you imagine Lady Colin alone. The candles burn low, shadows stretch across the walls. She sits at a desk, her hands folded, the silence thick around her. Perhaps she feels the weight of a world watching, or perhaps she simply grows weary, her strength stretched thin. Somewhere in the distance, a carriage rattles past, and she starts slightly, as though every sound might bring fresh judgment. Records suggest the case ended without a divorce. Granted, the accusations proved too tangled, the testimonies too suspect. She was neither freed nor condemned outright. Suspicion lingered like damp air refusing to lift. Yet, Lady Colin did not vanish into obscurity. In years to come, she reinvented herself. As a journalist, a writer, a wit in fashionable salons, she wrote columns on politics, on society, on art, her pen sharp where her tongue had once been silenced. But the memory of the trial never left her. Wherever she went, whispers followed as though the courtroom shadows clung to her gown forever. You walk along the Thames as these thoughts settle. The river smells of smoke and tar, the water lapping softly against stone. A barge slides past, its lantern bobbing. The air is cool, damp against your cheeks. Above, bells toll the hour, deep and unhurried. You pause at the railing, iron slick beneath your hand. The fog drifts low, carrying the echoes of voices, lawyers arguing, witnesses stammering, the collective gasp of the crowd. For a moment it feels as if the city itself is whispering still, replaying the scandal endlessly in its restless breath. Then silence settles, heavy and final. Only the river moves, only the lamps hiss. The story of Lady Colin Campbell lingers not in verdicts or decrees, but in the fragile memory of a woman standing unbroken before judgment, her eyes steady, her voice unwavering, her life forever marked by shadows she did not choose. The city wakes slowly on a grey morning, its chimneys breathing thin streams of smoke into the damp air. You walk past rows of narrow houses, their windows clouded with condensation, curtains drawn tight against the chill. The smell of bread drifts faintly from a nearby bakery, mingling with coal smoke and horse dung. Overhead, The bells of a parish church toll 8 times, the sound carrying across the rooftops like a summons. Today's Sep's story is not of dukes or famous politicians, but of an ordinary man, Mr. Lisle, whose jealousy and ingenuity collided in a way that made the courts laugh even as they judged him. His name lingers in records from 1857, bound forever to a strange device, the so-called crimconometer. You imagine his home first, a modest townhouse with narrow stairs worn smooth by countless steps. Inside, the air is close, smelling faintly of lamp oil and boiled potatoes. The furniture is plain but solid, polished weekly by careful hands. On a shelf rest books of sermons, beside them a stack of newspapers folded crisply. Yet beneath this quiet exterior lay unease. Mr. Lisle had grown suspicious of his wife. Whispers reached him, footsteps heard at odd hours, shadows glimpsed by neighbours, perhaps even a letter too swiftly tucked away. In the Victorian world, suspicion alone was a heavy burden. Reputation meant everything. Once stained, it rarely shone again. Divorce had only just been opened to the middle classes by the new law of 1857, and already the courts were crowded with men eager to prove betrayal. But proof was required, and proof was difficult. Adultery lived in shadows, behind doors, in silences. So Mr. Lisle turned to invention. With the help of a friend, he built a device, a contraption of weights and levers hidden beneath the marriage bed. Records describe it simply: a mechanism that would tip when more than one body pressed upon the mattress. It was absurd and yet deadly serious. You picture it now: iron rods polished faintly, hinges creaking as they shift, a counterbalance poised like a watchful eye. By day it lies silent, concealed. By night it waits, listening in metal, recording in silence. The crimconometer, the newspapers would later call it, half in jest, half in fascination. When the trial began, the courtroom was crowded. You find yourself pressed among strangers, the air thick with anticipation, the benches groan under the weight of bodies, the smell of damp coats rising like steam. A clerk reads aloud the charges, his voice echoing against stone. Heads turn, whispers dart. A mechanical bed. Surely the court has heard everything now. The device itself is carried into the room, placed upon a table for all to see. Gasps ripple through the gallery. Some lean forward eagerly, others stifle laughter behind gloved hands. The judge frowns, adjusting his wig, his expression torn between outrage and disbelief. The contraption gleams faintly in the candlelight, levers poised like skeletal fingers. A witness explains how it worked, his words precise but tinged with embarrassment. The levers shifted, he says, when weight was added beyond that of a single sleeper. The needle tipped, the record marked, proof mechanical and undeniable, or so Mr. Lisle insisted. You watch the faces in the crowd. Men smirk, women blush, reporters scribble furiously. Already you can imagine tomorrow's cartoons: an elaborate bedstead drawn with gears and dials, a husband peering through the keyhole, a judge wagging his finger. Lady Lisle, her name unrecorded in most reports, for wives were often shadows in their own scandals, sits pale and stiff, her eyes fixed on the floor, her gloved hands clenched tightly. She says little, and what she feels no one writes down. The court is interested only in proof, not in pain. The judge clears his throat, his voice booming. He questions whether such evidence can be trusted. Could a gust of movement trigger it? Could 2 children clambering upon the bed set it off? The gallery chuckles softly at the thought, quickly hushed by a gavel's strike. In the end, the device proves more spectacle than substance. The court listens, debates, then dismisses its weight as evidence. Mr. Lisle's petition is granted only a token victory, a single farthing in damages, so little as to sting more than soothe. The crimconometer, though ingenious, becomes a subject of mockery. Outside, the street buzzes with laughter. Newsboys shout the headline with relish: a husband's contraption for betrayal. Caricatures spread across shop windows. showing men tinkering with springs and levers, wives rolling their eyes in weary amusement. The scandal, though small compared to others, captures the imagination of a city eager for absurdity. You walk slowly away, the fog clinging low to the cobbles. The lamps glow dimly, their light bending in the mist. Somewhere nearby, laughter drifts from a tavern, mingling with the clink of glasses. A man recounts the story loudly, acting out the tilt of the bed to the delight of his companions. And yet beneath the humour lies unease. The device may have failed, but the hunger for proof remains. In an age obsessed with morality and appearance, even private lives are subject to public measurement. Metal, ink, testimony, all tools in the endless pursuit of certainty. You pause by the river, its surface black and restless. The damp air smells of smoke and salt. A barge drifts past, its lantern swaying, its reflection breaking in ripples. You rest your hand on the railing, iron cold beneath your glove, and breathe deeply. Records suggest Mr. Lyle faded into obscurity, his invention remembered more for ridicule than for justice. Yet the story endures, tucked in the margins of legal reports and newspapers, a reminder that in Victorian England, even suspicion could spark invention, and invention could spark scandal. The bells toll 9, each note deep and steady, the sound carrying through the mist. You turn from the river and walk homeward, boots tapping a slow rhythm on the stones. Behind you the laughter fades, but the echo of iron levers lingers still, a strange music from a contraption built to measure love, and instead measuring folly. The morning air tastes of coal smoke and damp stone as you step onto the wide boulevard. Carriages roll past in a steady rhythm, their wheels hissing against wet pavement. A newspaper boy shouts, his voice cracking with excitement. Scandal in the Marlborough House set. Lady Mordaunt declared insane. The words slice through the fog, sharper than the toll of any bell. You follow the tide of curious onlookers toward the courthouse. The crowd is thick, umbrellas colliding, shawls brushing against coats. Everyone wants to be close enough to hear the names, to catch the fragments of whispers about aristocrats, officers, and most dangerous of all, the heir to the throne. Inside, the air is stifling. Damp wool steams in the heat, the smell of wax and ink pressing against your senses. The benches creak as bodies shift. Fans flutter, parasols clatter shut. At the centre of this spectacle sits Lady Harriet Mordaunt, pale as porcelain, her dark eyes wide with fear or defiance. It is hard to tell which. Her husband, Sir Charles Mordaunt, stands rigid, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed ahead. He has filed for divorce, accusing her of adultery not once, but many times with men of high rank and high risk. Among the whispered names is that of the Prince of Wales himself, Edward, though no one dares speak it loudly within the court. The very suggestion is dynamite. You imagine the drawing rooms where the affair began, heavy draperies, carpets thick underfoot, the air rich with cigar smoke and brandy. The Marlborough House set, as the papers call them, is a circle of privilege and indulgence, where the rules of morality bend more easily for those with wealth and title. Yet even here, scandal can crack the veneer. Testimony fills the courtroom. Servants speak of late-night visitors, of doors shut too quickly, of whispers in the corridor. One claims to have seen a child's features that bore resemblance not to Sir Charles, but to another man. The gallery leans forward, hungry for confirmation. Faces pale, fans twitch. A cough rattles in the silence. Lady Mordaunt speaks little. Records suggest she confessed once, her words tumbling out in fear or despair. Yes, she had betrayed him, she said. The admission set the city ablaze. Yet soon after, doctors declared her insane, unfit to testify, unfit even to understand the charges against her. Was it truth or a strategy to shield higher names from ruin? The uncertainty clings like fog. You watch as physicians take the stand. They speak in measured tones of hysteria, of madness brought on by childbirth, of delusions. Their words echo through the chamber, polished and clinical yet tinged with unease. The diagnosis is convenient, too convenient, and yet no one dares to push harder. The implication of royal scandal hovers unspoken, a shadow heavy as stone. The judge listens grimly, his wig powdered, his robes sweeping across the bench. He strikes the gavel once, and the sound reverberates like a drum. The case closes not with clarity, but with evasion. Lady Mordaunt is declared insane and confined, her voice silenced, her fate sealed behind hospital walls. Sir Charles gains his separation, but not the satisfaction of a full divorce. The gallery disperses, murmuring, unsatisfied yet enthralled. Outside, the streets buzz with rumour. Newspaper boys shout themselves hoarse, their stacks thinning quickly. Headlines scream of disgrace, of madness, of high-born indiscretions. Yet the most dangerous name, Edward, remains absent from print, though it flickers on every tongue. In pubs and parlours, in drawing-rooms and stables, the whispers run wild. You walk along the Strand, the lamps hissing in the damp air, conversations drift around you. She was mad, of course. No, she was silenced. And what of the child? Each voice carries certainty, yet none holds truth entire. The city thrives on fragments, on suggestion sharper than fact. Later that night you imagine Lady Mordaunt alone in her confinement. The room is bare, the walls stark. A narrow bed stands by the window, barred against escape. The air smells of disinfectant and damp linen. She paces slowly, her slippers whispering across the floor. Perhaps she hums softly. Perhaps she weeps. Perhaps she stares silently at the ceiling. Her voice, once trembling in the courtroom, is now lost to time. Records hint she lived decades more in seclusion. Her life faded into obscurity even as her name lingered in gossip. For her, freedom never returned. For the public, the scandal never fully faded. Even years later, the Marlborough House set was remembered as a circle where pleasure turned perilous, and silence weighed heavier than truth. The public fascination with her case never rested only on adultery. It became a mirror for the anxieties of an age. Respectability was fragile. Morality, a mask easily cracked. If a lady of rank could be cast aside and locked away, then what protection had anyone else? Her story blurred lines between pity and condemnation, between madness and strategy, between guilt and survival. You pause at the river's edge, the iron railing cold beneath your hand. The water laps darkly, lanterns glimmering in broken lines. A clock strikes midnight, deep and sonorous. The fog presses closer, carrying the echoes of voices, the servants testifying, the physicians pronouncing, the gallery gasping. For a moment it feels as though you stand both inside and outside time, hearing their whispers blend into the city's endless breath. And then, silence. The lamps hiss, the river flows, and you walk on, boots splashing softly in puddles. Behind you Lady Mordaunt's story lingers, not in verdicts or decrees, but in the uneasy hush of secrets half told, half buried, yet never forgotten. The air feels softer tonight, though the fog still clings to the narrow streets. You hear the distant chiming of bells from St. James's Day, their notes rolling out over the rooftops, mingling with the sound of carriage wheels and the sharp whistle of a constable guiding traffic. London hums as always, but the hum feels more refined in certain quarters. Streets lined with stone mansions, windows glowing amber, salons alive with laughter and talk. Here you enter the circle known as the Souls. They are not politicians in smoky chambers nor merchants on the docks, but a set of aristocrats, artists, writers and thinkers who gather in drawing rooms heavy with velvet curtains and faint with the smell of cigars and lilies. They pride themselves on wit, on conversation, on sensitivity, an oasis of taste within the rigid structures of Victorian society. Yet even among them, scandal finds its way. At the centre sits Violet Manners, the Duchess of Rutland. Her beauty is renowned, her charm the thread that binds this circle together. She moves easily among them. Painters sketch her, poets write lines inspired by her eyes, lords bend close to hear her laughter. She is both muse and hostess, flame and hearth, but beauty invites scrutiny, and closeness invites rumour. You imagine one of those evenings. The drawing room glows with candlelight reflected in gilt mirrors. Silk rustles as guests take their seats. A piano tinkles softly in the corner, a melody drifting like smoke. Violet leans against the mantel, her gown pale blue, her pearls catching the light. She speaks with Harry Cust, a man of wit and reckless charm, his eyes alive with amusement. Others watch, some smiling, some frowning. In such circles, glances last longer than words. Records suggest Violet and Cust grew close, closer than propriety allowed. Their connection was undeniable. Letters hint at tenderness, at a devotion that went beyond friendship. And then came the birth of her youngest daughter, Diana. In 1892, whispers rose quickly. Was her true father not the Duke of Rutland, but Cust himself? The city never knew for certain, but certainty was not required. In society, suspicion alone was enough. Behind fans, in smoking rooms, in the private corridors of clubs, the rumour spread like spilled ink. Diana, some said, bore Harry Cust's features too closely to ignore. Others shook their heads, calling it cruel gossip. Yet the whispers persisted, soft as moth wings, relentless as tide. You picture Violet in the quiet after such gatherings, the lamps extinguished, the hall empty, her slippers brushing softly against stone as she climbs the stairs. She pauses at the nursery door, watching her child breathe, small chest rising and falling, face serene. Perhaps she sees herself in that face. Perhaps she sees another. Her hand rests lightly on the cradle. Her lips press silently to the child's forehead. Love, whatever its source, binds more strongly than rumour. But the world outside is less tender. You walk through the Strand one afternoon, and the newspapers lie spread in shop windows. Cartoons of aristocrats appear again, their features exaggerated, their elegance mocked. The souls once admired for refinement are now ridiculed for decadence. Damned souls, some call them, half in jest, half in judgment. In a coffee house nearby, men debate loudly. What use is all their wit, if they cannot master themselves, one declares. Another counters, they are freer than we. Envy speaks louder than truth. The clink of cups, the scrape of chairs, the rumble of voices fills the air, each word another thread in the net of scandal. At the same time, others defend Violet fiercely. Writers sketch her portrait not as fallen, but as tragic and noble. Painters still clamour to capture her image, even as society murmurs behind her back. For some, she becomes a symbol of beauty too radiant to be confined by convention. For others, she is a warning, proof that indulgence leads only to disgrace. You leave the noise and step back into the foggy night. The lamps glow faintly, halos blurred by mist. The river smells of iron and tar, its black surface rippling under the push of barges. The city seems to exhale slowly, as though weary of its own appetite for rumour. Yet even in the hush you sense Violet's story lingering, murmured in drawing rooms, inked in margins, painted in glances. Records suggest Violet endured the whispers with composure. She remained a duchess, a patroness of the arts, the flame of the souls long after others faded. Her daughter Diana grew into her own legend, a woman of wit and spirit, admired across generations. If her paternity was ever in doubt, it mattered little in the end. The world had already chosen to believe what it wished. You pause outside a grand townhouse, its facade washed in lamplight. Through the tall windows you glimpse silhouettes, a woman's hand gesturing gracefully, a man leaning close, laughter rising like bubbles. The scene is timeless, and yet fragile. You know how quickly such laughter can be transformed into whispers once the doors close. The bells toll 11, deep and measured, their sound rolling through the city. You draw your coat tighter, your breath clouding the air. Around you, London dozes, but its dreams are restless, dreams of beauty, of wit, of scandal carried on the lips of those who cannot resist repeating what they half believe. And as you walk homeward, the fog closing behind you, Violet Manners' story follows, not written in verdicts or decrees, but in the shimmer of candlelight on pearls, in the hush of a nursery, in the quiet persistence of rumour that outlives even truth. The night deepens as you walk westward, boots sounding hollow on the flagstones, gas lamps burn low, their halos thin in the mist. Beyond the shop fronts and crowded taverns lies a quieter quarter, the grand houses of those whose names are printed in debrets and whispered in scandal sheets. Here, every curtain drawn too quickly, every carriage called at the wrong hour, carries weight enough to topple reputations. It is here you hear the name most often repeated, Lady Florence Clifden, known to her friends as Florrie. She was bright, magnetic, impossible to ignore, her laughter carried across salons, her presence lit gatherings otherwise heavy with formality. Yet charm in the Victorian world was as dangerous as it was prized. You imagine one of those evenings at Marlborough House. The rooms are rich with velvet draperies, and the glow of chandeliers. Cigarette smoke curls toward the ceiling, mingling with the perfume of roses arranged in heavy vases. Men cluster in corners, their voices low, while women lean closer to one another, their fans flickering like moth wings. At the centre of it all, Florrie stands in a gown of pale silk, her smile quick, her eyes mischievous. The Prince of Wales, Edward, circles close, his gaze lingering longer than propriety would allow. Records suggest that she was spoken of as his mistress, though never officially acknowledged. The very hint of such intimacy was enough to set tongues wagging. Letters hint at nights spent in each other's company, carriage rides taken at odd hours, sudden absences from society, explained away too neatly. Whether the rumours were true mattered less than the fact they were believed. You see the court of public opinion at work, not in a judge's chambers, but in the salons of Mayfair. A hostess raises her eyebrow, whispering to a guest. A gentleman smirks as he repeats the gossip to a friend over brandy. The words grow sharper with each retelling, embroidered with detail never spoken by those involved. By the time they reach the newspapers, the story has taken a life of its own. And yet Florrie does not retreat. She appears in public still, her head held high, her pearls glinting in the lamplight. You picture her stepping from a carriage onto a rain-slick pavement, the crowd parting, the sound of whispers rustling like dry leaves. She ignores them, her chin lifted, her steps steady, as though scandal itself were a cloak she had chosen to wear. But scandal weighs heavily, even when carried with grace. The Marlborough House set, once admired for its brilliance and charm, becomes in the eyes of the public a circle of decadence. Florrie, more than most, embodies that contradiction, admired for beauty, condemned for boldness. One evening you step into a coffee house, the windows fogged with steam, the air thick with the smell of roasted beans and damp coats. A group of clerks huddles around a paper, their fingers smudged with ink. "It's her again," one mutters, tapping the column. "Always her name, never his. Convenient, isn't it?" Another shakes his head. "She'll carry the blame. He'll carry on." Their voices blend with the scrape of chairs and the hiss of the coffee pot, ordinary men dissecting the lives of those far above them. Outside again, the city moves with restless energy. Newsboys cry headlines of theatre and politics, yet in quieter corners the only subject that matters is Florrie. In taverns her name is spoken with laughter, in drawing rooms with disdain. Her story spreads not in official reports, but in sighs, glances, silences that mean more than words. The press itself toys with her reputation. Satirical sketches show a lady leaning too close to a royal figure, both half hidden by a fan. Pamphlets mock the decadence of Marlborough House, hinting more than stating, daring readers to imagine the rest. The caricatures draw crowds to shop windows, where laughter and disapproval mingle freely. You imagine her retreating to her own rooms at night, the laughter of society fading behind closed doors. The lamps burn low, shadows stretching across embroidered curtains. She sits by a dressing table, hairpins scattered across its surface, her face pale in the mirror's reflection. Perhaps she touches a folded letter hidden in a drawer, or perhaps she stares at the flame of the candle until it gutters. Whatever her private thoughts, they are lost to time. Yet she endures. Records hint that she continued to appear in society, sometimes arm in arm with friends, sometimes alone, but never fully withdrawing. For every raised eyebrow there was also admiration. Painters still asked to capture her likeness, and hosts still sought her presence to enliven dull evenings. She remained magnetic, even as scandal clung to her name. Her daughter Diana, born in the early 1890s, became another centre of speculation. Was she the Duke's child or Cust's? Society debated endlessly, though the family maintained silence. Silence itself became its own verdict, neither clearing nor condemning, only prolonging the whispers. In this, Lady Florence was not alone. Many women of her world bore the brunt of whispers, while men walked away untouched. She became, in some eyes, the very embodiment of that imbalance, celebrated in private, shamed in public, remembered not for her wit or kindness, but for the shadows cast around her name. You pause by the river once more, its black surface restless under the mist. A barge glides past, its lantern bobbing, its reflection broken in the water. The air smells of smoke and tar, damp earth and coal. A clock strikes midnight, each note rolling out across the city. In the hush that follows, you feel the weight of her story. Not a trial, not a decree, but a life lived beneath endless gaze. Lady Florence Clifden, both muse and scandal, both admired and condemned. Her footsteps echo still in the salons of the city, her laughter still lingers faintly in the air. And as you turn homeward, boots tapping softly on the wet stones, her presence follows, a reminder that in Victorian England, to shine too brightly was always to risk being burned by the very light that made you visible. The evening fog curls low over the Strand, wrapping lamp-posts in halos of pale gold. The air smells of damp stone, tobacco smoke and roasted chestnuts sold from a brazier at the corner. You walk slowly through the crowd, and amid the bustle one name seems to shimmer more brightly than the rest. Lillie Langtry. She is not a duchess, nor a lady by birth. She is an actress, a creature of the stage, and in Victorian England that alone makes her both fascinating and suspect. But Lillie is no ordinary performer. Known as the Jersey Lily, she has captivated the city with her pale complexion, dark hair, and a beauty so striking that painters clamour to capture it, and audiences hush the moment she steps on stage. You imagine the first time she appeared before the Prince of Wales. A salon glowed with gaslight, the air thick with perfume and cigar smoke. Gentlemen leaned forward, their eyes following her every gesture, while ladies measured her with cool glances. At the centre of the room, Edward's gaze fixed upon her, drawn as though by gravity itself. The room, once noisy with chatter, softened around her presence. Records suggest their relationship blossomed quickly, though the boundaries between admiration, friendship, and intimacy blurred in rumour. She rode in his carriage, dined at his table, and became a fixture in the glittering yet dangerous circle of Marlborough House. The press, cautious with royal names, wrote in half-sentences and winks, but the public needed little prompting. Whispers filled the air, the actress and the prince. You picture her in the theatre on a winter evening. The house is packed, the air warm with breath and anticipation. Gas lamps hiss, casting their glow over plush red seats. When Lillie steps onto the stage, silence descends. Her voice carries clear and steady, her movements graceful, her every glance calculated yet seemingly effortless. In that moment, she belongs to the audience, and yet everyone knows she belongs also to a world beyond the stage. Outside, men gather at taverns to debate her merits. A beauty, no doubt, one says, raising his glass. Another shakes his head. But an actress, and worse, an actress too close to power. Women whisper her name at sewing circles, sometimes with envy, sometimes with pity. In caricatures pasted to shop windows, she is drawn with a crown hovering above her head, half mockery, half prophecy. The prince's affections for her are no secret, though never acknowledged outright. You imagine them together in a carriage late at night, the lamps outside throwing fleeting shapes across her face. Her laughter is soft, his voice low, the streets of London blur past, and for a moment the world outside disappears. Yet in truth the world never disappears. Eyes are everywhere, and gossip travels faster than wheels can turn. Lillie herself navigates this precarious life with poise. Records hint she was shrewd as well as beautiful, managing debts, cultivating friendships, turning her notoriety into a kind of currency. She wore gowns that set trends, appeared at events with confidence, and met her critics not with silence but with wit. A woman of the stage, yes, but one who learned to play society as skillfully as any role. Still, scandal clings. When she bore a child, rumours swirled again. Was the father Edward, or another among her admirers? The truth remains uncertain, buried beneath layers of silence and speculation. Yet uncertainty only fueled fascination. Every glance, every absence, every whispered exchange added to the story. On foggy mornings, newspapers fly from presses smelling of fresh ink, and her name lies bold in the columns. The reports mix fact with suggestion, never quite committing, yet always implying. Men fold the sheets under their arms as they hurry to offices, while women linger at breakfast tables, reading her name between sips of tea. Even those who claim to despise gossip cannot resist. You leave the bustle of the theatre and step back into the cool night. The fog presses close, muffling sound, but even in the hush you hear her name carried in fragments. Lillie, the Prince, the Lily of Jersey. Her presence feels everywhere, from posters on brick walls to the conversations that rise in the hum of the city. Later you imagine her alone in her rooms. The candles burn low, their light flickering across the polished wood of her dressing table. Jewels glimmer in velvet cases, silks spill across a chair. She sits before a mirror, her face pale in its reflection. Perhaps she removes a letter from a drawer, unfolding it slowly, her eyes softening as she reads. Or perhaps she simply stares at her own image, searching for strength in the woman the world sees, and the woman she knows herself to be. In years to come, her relationship with Edward cooled, replaced by new faces, new names. Yet Lillie remained luminous, reinventing herself as a society hostess, a horsewoman, even a businesswoman. She built a life beyond the stage, beyond scandal, her name enduring long after the whispers faded. For the Victorian public, however, she remained a symbol, proof that beauty could bend boundaries, that charm could breach walls of class, and that even the most carefully ordered society was vulnerable to desire. To some she was a cautionary tale, to others a beacon of independence, to all she was unforgettable. You pause by the Thames, the iron railing damp beneath your glove, the water glistens with the reflection of gaslight, rippling in broken lines. A clock strikes midnight, its sound low and steady. The city exhales, its breath heavy with smoke and mist. And in that hush you feel her still. The echo of her laughter in a salon, the hush of an audience as she steps on stage, the whisper of her name passed from lip to lip. Lillie Langtry, the actress who dared to cross the invisible lines of class, the woman who became both muse and scandal in the same breath. Her presence is less a shadow than a glow, faint yet persistent, lingering in the fog like perfume. Even now, as the city settles into uneasy sleep, you sense her story clinging to its walls, as if every lamplit street corner still remembers the sound of her voice and the daring of her choices. The fog lifts slowly this morning, revealing wet cobblestones slick with last night's rain. Carriages rattle past in quick succession, their lamps faint in the pale light. You pass a newspaper stand, its damp sheets pinned to wooden boards, the ink bleeding at the edges. Among the political columns, a familiar name flickers into view: Lord Randolph Churchill. His speeches fill headlines, but beneath them quieter stories linger, the whispers of a troubled marriage, of a woman too dazzling for Victorian restraint. His wife Jennie Jerome came from across the Atlantic, her accent a constant reminder that she was American-born. London society both adored and resented her. She had beauty enough to halt conversation, charm that could lighten a heavy room, and boldness that unsettled those accustomed to demure smiles. She walked into drawing rooms with her head high, dark eyes alight, silks brushing across polished floors, and conversation bent around her as iron bends to a magnet. You imagine the first evenings of their marriage, a grand house glowing with gaslight, glasses of champagne tinkling, voices rising in merriment, Randolph young, ambitious, already marked for politics, Jennie radiant at his side, her laughter carrying across the room. They appeared a perfect match of intellect and allure, yet perfection rarely withstands the gaze of society. Whispers began soon after. Jennie was too free with her laughter, too quick to meet a man's eyes, too fearless in her movements. Records suggest she was admired by powerful figures, some said courted by them. Her friendships with statesmen, soldiers, and aristocrats fed the rumour mill endlessly. Was she merely charming, or something more? You step into a coffee house, the windows steamed, the air thick with tobacco. Clerks lean over newspapers, muttering. Churchill's wife again, one says, tapping a column. American blood, wild as the frontier. Another smirks. Or cleverer than any of us. Their words mingle with the scrape of chairs and the hiss of boiling water. The name Jerome is spoken as often as Churchill, a pairing that unsettled as much as it fascinated. Lord Randolph himself, fiery and erratic, gave the whispers room to grow. His temper was sharp, his moods mercurial. He quarrelled with allies, clashed with opponents, and sometimes with Jennie herself. Their marriage, passionate and stormy, unfolded in full view of society, eager to see cracks. When his health began to falter, records suggest the strain of political life, compounded by illness. Gossip turned crueler still. Some claimed Jennie sought comfort in other arms. Others insisted she remained loyal, though her loyalty was measured differently than most imagined. You imagine her in her private rooms, the lamps low, her face reflected in a tall mirror. Letters lie folded on the desk, their wax seals broken. She reads them again, her fingers lingering on certain lines, her lips pressing together. Perhaps they are notes from friends, perhaps from admirers. Whatever their nature, they will never see daylight, and yet their very existence becomes fodder for speculation. Meanwhile, Randolph pushes himself in Parliament, his speech is sharp, his voice carrying across the chamber. He is brilliant, unpredictable, admired and resented in equal measure. Yet even his triumphs are shadowed by mutters of domestic unrest. The public cannot separate his political fortunes from the woman at his side. In the streets, pamphlets circulate with sly commentary. Satirical sketches show Jennie dancing while Randolph fumes, or standing serenely while suitors bow. They exaggerate, mock, distort, but they spread quickly, pasted in shop windows, smirked over in taverns. Scandal does not need truth. It only needs repetition. You step into a crowded salon one evening in imagination. The room glitters with chandeliers, the air heavy with perfume and cigar smoke. Jennie is there, her gown shimmering, her voice animated as she speaks to a cluster of men. Laughter ripples, fans flutter, glances dart. In a corner, someone mutters, "She thrives too much on admiration." Yet even the critic cannot take his eyes off her. Their son, Winston, is a boy in those years, his future unknown. In time he will carry the Churchill name into history, but now he is only a child in the nursery, perhaps listening through half-open doors, sensing tension he cannot name. His mother kisses him good-night, her perfume lingering on the air, her steps fading down the hall. Outside, the world continues to whisper about her. About them. As Randolph's health worsens, the rumours grow sharper. Records suggest Jennie nursed him, arranged care, tried to shield him from the harshest gossip. Yet society chose its own narrative, that she was faithless, restless, too alive to remain at one man's side. The truth is blurred, lost in the smoke of parlours and the ink of newspapers. One night you find yourself walking by the Thames. The water is black, its surface broken by ripples from passing barges. The lamps glow faintly, their reflections shivering. You pause by the railing, the iron damp beneath your glove. Behind you the city murmurs, voices rising, stories twisting, reputations weighed and measured. Jennie lives on long after Randolph's early death, reinventing herself again and again. She hosts salons, advises statesmen, writes, marries twice more. To some she remains the scandalous American, to others the embodiment of resilience. Her life becomes a tapestry of reinvention, threaded through with both admiration and suspicion. In London's memory, though, her figure is always framed in contrasts. The brilliant hostess and the whispered temptress, the loyal wife and the restless spirit. Society both punished and fed upon her brightness, and yet she endured, outlasting many who judged her. The bells toll midnight now, their sound low and steady. The river laps against the stone embankment, carrying the echoes of a restless city. You walk on, your footsteps slow, the mist curling close. Behind you her name lingers, entwined with whispers, shimmering faintly like gaslight in fog. And in that quiet you sense the shape of her resilience, still standing, still luminous. A reminder that scandal could never entirely eclipse a woman who refused to vanish. The rain falls more heavily as you make your way northward. The city sounds shifting around you. Instead of London's steady roar, there is now the hum of Glasgow, mills humming in the distance, cartwheels grinding on wet stones, the air thick with coal smoke drifting from factory chimneys. The year is 1857, and the air itself seems charged, restless. Here the scandal is not about dukes or duchesses, but about a young woman named Madeline Hamilton Smith. Her family is respectable, her upbringing strict. She lives in a fine house on Blitheswood Square, the kind with polished brass knockers and windows scrubbed until they gleam. On the outside, her life seems sheltered, pristine, but inside those walls, letters were being written, hundreds of them, letters that would set the city on fire. You picture her at her desk, the candle burning low, the paper spread before her. Ink stains her fingers as her hand moves quickly, urgently. The words are full of longing, of a passion far too dangerous for her world. Each fold of the letter, each pressed seal, carries not only love but risk. The recipient is Pierre-Émile Langelier, a clerk, older, less respectable but magnetic in his own way. Their meetings take place in secret, late evenings, borrowed gardens, whispered words in the dark. At first it is romance, a defiance of rigid lines, but soon the tone of the letters shifts. Quarrels break through the ink. Her parents arrange another match, her affection wanes. She hesitates. Emile presses harder, reminding her of promises, of letters that could ruin her if revealed. The balance tips and affection sours into tension. Then comes the night of his illness. Records suggest Emile drank cocoa, warm and sweet, laced with something bitter. He is seized with violent sickness, his body racked with pain. Within hours, he is dead. The doctors speak of arsenic, a poison all too familiar in Victorian households, bought easily in chemist shops for killing rats. The city gasps. The police investigate, and quickly their eyes turn to Madeline. She had purchased arsenic. They discover enough to kill. Her defense is that she bought it for cosmetic purposes, to improve her complexion, a practice whispered of but seldom admitted. Was it vanity or intent? The line blurs. You step into the courtroom in imagination, the High Court of Justiciary in Edinburgh, where the trial was held. The walls rise high, solemn and cold, the benches filled with a restless crowd. Men in black coats lean forward, their faces tight with curiosity. Women sit with gloved hands folded, eyes fixed on the young woman at the centre of it all. Madeline is barely 21, pale and composed, her dark hair pinned neatly. She does not weep. She answers questions softly, steadily, even as the evidence piles around her. The letters are read aloud, one by one. Their words, meant for the eyes of one man, now spill across the chamber. The air thickens with each confession of longing, each declaration of love, each desperate plea. The gallery leans closer, breathless. It is both trial and theatre. You feel the heat of the lamps, the press of bodies, the scrape of quills racing to record every word. Testimony follows: neighbours who saw, servants who suspected, chemists who sold her the arsenic. Some speak with certainty, others falter, but always the shadow of poison lingers in the air, acrid even in imagination. The judge's voice is grave, his wig shadowing his eyes. He explains the charge of murder, the severity of what is at stake. The jury listens, 12 men shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Their faces are drawn, their hands restless. The weight of a young woman's life rests in their decision. And then the verdict. Not proven. A peculiarity of Scottish law, neither guilty nor innocent. She is free to walk, yet forever marked. The crowd erupts, some gasping, some murmuring relief, others shaking their heads. Outside, the streets buzz as though a festival had passed. The words ripple through taverns and tenements alike. She did it. She didn't. The jury could not decide. You step out into the night after the trial. Rain falls lightly, pattering on the stone. The lamps glow dim, their reflections shimmering in the wet pavement. People cluster beneath umbrellas, debating. A woman whispers, "She'll never escape those letters." A man mutters, "She is guilty as sin." Another shrugs. The law has spoken, and yet not spoken. Madeline leaves Scotland soon after. Her life changed forever. Records suggest she married, lived abroad, reinvented herself. Even as the shadow of the trial followed her name, she faded from the headlines, but never from memory. To this day, the case remains unsolved, suspended between truth and silence. You pause at the Clyde River, its dark waters rolling under the bridges. The smell of wet stone and coal smoke fills your lungs. You rest your hand on the railing, the iron cold beneath your glove. The bells toll in the distance, solemn, their echoes carrying across the damp air. And in that sound you hear the uncertainty still. A young woman, a drawer of letters, a man found poisoned. Was it love curdled into fury, or was it chance? The law chose neither guilt nor innocence, leaving the story unfinished, the whispers endless. Later, as the rain eases, you walk past Blitheswood Square once more. The houses stand silent, their facades damp, their windows dark. Behind one of them, long ago, a young woman bent over her desk, pouring her heart onto paper. Those words became her chains. Even now, you can almost hear the scratch of her pen, the soft crackle of paper folded, the breath held before sealing wax hardened. You walk on slowly, the rain soft against your face, the city hushed around you. Behind you, her shadow lingers, blurred yet vivid, like ink on damp paper that refuses to fade. The spring of 1895 should feel lighter, yet the air in London is heavy, charged like the pause before a storm. You walk through the West End, past glittering theatres, their posters pasted fresh and bright. Among the names in bold lettering, one shines more brilliantly than the rest. Oscar Wilde. His plays fill houses night after night. Audiences laugh at his wit, repeat his clever lines over tea the next morning, and critics marvel at his brilliance. You hear his name spoken in drawing rooms, in taverns, even in markets, spoken with admiration, envy, fascination. He is a man at the height of fame, clothed in velvet and lilies, walking the streets like a character from his own work. The faint scent of heliotrope clings to his lapels. The flash of green carnation on his coat lapel becomes a silent signal of belonging for others like him. Yet behind the applause, a darker murmur begins to rise. It starts with whispers about his friendship with Lord Alfred Douglas, Bosie as those close call him. The young man is golden-haired, charming, reckless, adored by Wilde, despised by his father, the Marquess of Queensberry. Rumour coils quickly, fed by disapproval and by envy. In the rigid morality of Victorian England, affection between men is not merely scandalous, it is criminal. You picture Wilde in the drawing rooms of society, his cigarette holder balanced delicately, his voice rich, his words dazzling. Every quip draws laughter, every pause commands silence. Yet even as he performs, eyes linger too long, measuring the space between him and Douglas. Notes pass, glances spark and whispers curl like smoke in the corners. Then comes the confrontation. The Marquess of Queensberry, wild with fury, leaves a card at Wilde's club. The ink is scrawled and blunt. For Oscar Wilde, posing as a sodomite. The words crack like thunder, impossible to ignore. Friends urge Wilde to flee, to stay silent, to let the insult rot. But pride wins. He sues Queensberry for libel, confident his eloquence can carry him through. You enter the courtroom in imagination, the air charged with tension. The benches are filled, reporters scribbling furiously, spectators holding their breath. Wilde takes the stand, his velvet coat gleaming, his face pale but composed. He speaks with wit, even here, parrying questions with cleverness, turning the courtroom into theatre. When asked if he kissed a young man, he answers lightly, "Oh dear, no. He was far too ugly." Laughter ripples, but unease grows. Wit once his armour, now sounds like arrogance. The prosecution presses harder. Letters are produced. Phrases too tender, too intimate. Words meant for private eyes now exposed to a hostile world. Servants testify, recounting visits, exchanges, details half true or embellished. The air grows thick, suffocating. Each word a stone added to the weight pressing upon him. You watch Wilde closely. His voice falters now. His hands tremble slightly. He raises his chin, but his eyes flicker with unease. The tide has turned. The libel case collapses. Queensberry is acquitted, and Wilde is arrested on charges of gross indecency. The audience of the courtroom shifts, shock, satisfaction, pity, all mingled in the restless murmur of the crowd. The second trial follows swiftly. This time Wilde is the accused, seated silently as witnesses tear apart his life. The gallery is packed, the air stifling. You hear the scrape of chairs, the rustle of skirts, the hiss of whispered commentary. A man coughs, a woman stifles a gasp. The words indecency, immorality, corruption fall heavy, repeated again and again. Outside the courthouse, crowds gather. Newsboys shout the headlines. Caricatures fill shop windows and gossip roars through pubs and parlors. For weeks, Wilde is the only subject. Admirers fall silent, friends step back, theatres close his plays. Fame, once bright as a flame, now burns him. The verdict comes guilty. 2 years hard labour. The words strike like iron, echoing in the silent chamber. Wilde stands, shoulders bowed, lips pressed tight. The gavel falls, and with it the life he built shatters. You follow him in imagination to prison. The air is cold, the stone walls damp, the iron bars clanging shut behind him. Gone are velvet coats and lilies. Now coarse prison cloth hangs heavy on his shoulders. He scrubs floors, picks oakum, lives in silence, broken only by commands barked harshly. His body weakens, his health falters, but his spirit clings faintly to words. Letters from prison survive. Fragments of his voice. They speak of sorrow, of betrayal, of love still burning painfully. The gods had given me almost everything, he writes, but I let myself be lured into long spells of senseless and sensual ease. His words, stripped of wit, carry only the weight of regret. And yet even here, beauty lingers. He writes of compassion, of the need for kindness, of the love that endures despite ruin. The same pen that once wrote comedies now etches sorrow onto paper, but sorrow still touched with grace. When he is released, he is broken. He leaves England, never to return. In Paris he drifts, diminished, haunted. You imagine him in a cheap hotel on the left bank, the wallpaper peeling, the ceiling stained with damp. He lies on a narrow bed, the blanket rough, his breath shallow. Outside, the city hums with life, cafes alive with music, boulevards bright with lamps. Yet for him, the world is hushed. Friends visit, fewer than before. They bring wine, conversation, scraps of laughter. He smiles faintly, but the brilliance that once lit London salons now flickers weakly. His pen scratches on paper, but the sentences trail off unfinished. He walks the Paris streets in old clothes, his figure unsteady, yet still unmistakable to those who remember the flame. Within a few short years he dies, far from the applause that once echoed for him. A priest recites prayers, candles burn dim, and the world goes on. Yet the shadow of his story remains, etched into the very air of the city he left behind. You walk now along the Thames in imagination, the fog pressing close, the lamps glowing dim. His story still hangs in the air, glory and ruin entwined, brilliance undone by pride, by law, by love forbidden. Victorian England punished him, yet could never erase him. The bells toll midnight, solemn and unhurried. The river laps softly against the embankment, its dark waters carrying reflections that shiver and break. You pause at the railing, the iron damp beneath your glove, and in the hush you hear the echo of his words, gentle, sorrowful, enduring. Oscar Wilde, a man of wit and beauty, condemned for love, remembered for words that still shine even in the fog. The century wanes, and London shifts once more. Gas lamps still hiss along the Strand, but whispers now belong to a new age, an age of motor cars and electric lights. Horse-drawn hansom cabs still clatter, but they share the streets now with early engines that cough and wheeze. The fog has not vanished, nor the gossip, but the city feels poised between eras, and still, even in its twilight, the Victorian world produces one final scandal to carry its legacy forward. Her name is Daisy Greville, Countess of Warwick. She is bold where others are cautious, outspoken where others whisper, and her life becomes one of the last great scandals of the age. Born into privilege, Daisy had every advantage: education, beauty, wealth, and a castle to call her home. Yet she never fit neatly into the mould expected of her. She loved spectacle, she courted attention, she moved through society not as a shadow but as a flame. You imagine her first encounters with the Prince of Wales, Edward. The setting is Warwick Castle itself, stone walls hung with tapestries, fires roaring in cavernous hearths, light flickering across polished armour mounted on the walls. Guests chatter in the hall, their laughter ringing off stone. At the centre of it all is Daisy, radiant in silk, her laughter bright, her wit sharp. The prince, broad-shouldered, heavy with age, but still magnetic, leans close, delighted by her confidence. Their eyes meet, and from that moment their companionship begins. Unlike earlier scandals, theirs is no secret tryst hidden in alleyways or whispered of only by servants. Daisy and Edward appear openly together, riding, dining, attending events side by side. Her presence at Marlborough House raises eyebrows, but she never lowers her gaze. In drawing rooms across London, society whispers the Countess of Warwick and the Prince of Wales. The relationship lasts for years. She writes him letters, playful and affectionate, some tinged with practical pleas. Records suggest she asked him for financial help when her debts mounted, debts that seemed impossible to hide. For Daisy, extravagance was both joy and curse. She hosted dazzling gatherings, filled her castle with guests dressed in the latest fashion, and supported causes that cost more than her purse could bear. In time, society began to murmur that her relationship with Edward was not merely of the heart, but of necessity. You imagine her late at night, the castle quiet, her desk covered with papers, letters unopened, bills stacked high, a candle guttering in the draught. She dips her pen, hesitates, then writes to Edward, not as a lover this time, but as a desperate friend. Her words are careful, but the rumours that follow are not. Soon pamphlets hint at blackmail, at scandal deeper than affection. Edward himself remains largely untouched. Like so many men of rank before him, the burden of gossip falls on the woman's shoulders. Daisy is painted as reckless, as manipulative, as a woman undone by her own ambition. The truth, as always, is blurred, lost between admiration and condemnation. Yet Daisy refuses to disappear. Where other women faded into silence, she reinvented herself. She turned her voice toward politics, joining causes considered radical, social reform, education, even socialism. She hosted debates, supported workers' rights, and aligned herself with movements far from the glittering world of aristocratic privilege. Some mocked her as inconsistent. How could a woman who once dined with princes speak now for the poor? But others admired her courage, her refusal to remain trapped by the image society forced upon her. In salons and clubs, her name still draws sharp commentary. A man mutters, "She tried to play the prince like a banker." A woman replies, "At least she did something beyond teas and tapestries." The debate continues. Her reputation stretched thin between scandal and respect. You walk through the changing city, the lamps glowing brighter now with electricity, the streets filled with both carriages and the clatter of early trams. Newspaper boys still cry her name, though less sharply than before. Her story is not a single explosion of scandal, but a slow-burning flame, flickering through years, never fully extinguished. And so Daisy Greville becomes the symbol of the Victorian twilight. Not ruined entirely, not celebrated entirely, but suspended between infamy and admiration. She lives long into the new century, her political work remembered, her debts notorious, her role in Edward's life whispered long after both were gone. Standing now at the edge of the Thames, you sense her among the echoes. The fog drifts low, softening the gaslight halos, muting the noise of the city. Around you swirl the remnants of all the scandals you have followed. Isabella Robinson's diary, Lady Colin Campbell's trial, Violet Manners' whispers, Lillie Langtry's laughter, Oscar Wilde's sorrow. They gather like voices in mist, each still carrying the same weight of longing, secrecy, or defiance. Daisy's name joins them, not as the first nor the last, but as the closing note of a century obsessed with appearances and undone by desire. The bells strike midnight. Their sound rolls across the rooftops, deep and final. The century breathes out, and with it the scandals fade, leaving only the stillness of fog, the softness of water, the quiet memory of stories too human ever to vanish completely. You're safe now. The voices of Victorian London grow fainter, dissolving into the night. The scandals that once seemed so loud, so consuming, now drift into nothing more than distant echoes. Every whispered rumour, every courtroom gasp, every rustle of paper in the galleries fades like mist in morning light. You breathe slowly, evenly. The air is softer here, no longer thick with coal smoke or gossip, but cool and calm like a quiet countryside after rain. The ground beneath your feet feels steady, the world no longer pressing, no longer watching. You are alone but not lonely, simply resting in stillness. Around you, the fog smooths itself into gentle white, like a blanket settling across the city. The bells that tolled so sharply before now sound far away, their notes rounded, hushed, almost like a lullaby. Even the river, restless and dark, quiets its ripples until it seems to breathe with you, rising and falling in calm rhythm. Your eyes grow heavy. The details blur, the lamps, the carriages, the restless crowds, all fading into the background. What remains is only comfort, only peace. You lie back in this quiet world, feeling the softness of the moment wrap around you. Each breath grows longer, slower, each sound slips further away. The stories have ended, the century has ended, and now even the echoes have ended. You're safe, the world behind you fades, and the only thing left is rest. Sweet dreams.